My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review for the entire series of Game of Thrones, and there'll be spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, go watch it, then come back and watch this video because I will be going in depth. Now, I've done some series reviews like Lost that went on for far longer than I would like to go on here for. I don't want to repeat the same things I've said time and time again, so I'm just going to go through all the different characters, all the stories, and then I'm just going to wrap it up. I want to keep this video around 20 minutes so I don't go on too long and repeat all of the exact same stuff. So let's begin talking about the cast and the characters. And first we've got Sean Bean playing Ned Stark, and he dies in the first season, but it still has weight at the end of the show. And I think this character is so well written in the short time he's in it. It shows you what happens when you're an honorable, good man in this universe, and Sean Bean plays him so perfectly. You've got Michelle Fairley as Catelyn Stark, who I think is a great mother and wife. She truly loved her kids, that she let Jaime go just on the possibility that she could get Arya and Sansa back. On top of that, when she's devastated about Ned's death, she sees Rob's upset too, so she gets it together so she can comfort her son. I think she's a very well-written character, and her last moments, that last scream is just brilliantly acted. So great character. You've got Sophie Turner as Sansa, who always dreamed of having a fairy tale life where she meets her prince in shining armor, and she was hoping Joffrey would be that, but then the realities of this world just come crumbling down on her, and she just has to survive in King's Landing under the worst of circumstances. And I know she kind of has the reputation of being a victim character, but in the first few seasons, I'd argue she is very strong. She goes through tons, and she doesn't falter. So I think it shows you how well written and how strong this character is. My issue with her is that in season 5, she definitely regresses from where she ends off in season 4. And then in season 7 and 8, I found her to be a bit unlikable. So, very good character for the most part. Sophie Turner does a great job. Just, she isn't always consistent. Then you've got Maisie Williams as Arya, who is so damn likable. I love how she wants to be a fighter. And even when she's given shit material, Maisie Williams still brings some likability and some charm to her, and I think she is just one of the very best characters in the first 4 seasons. Then you've got Richard Madden as Robb Stark, who I think is a good leader, but naive to a fault. He follows his heart instead of his obligations, and he ends up paying the price for it, and I think Richard Madden plays this character perfectly. Then you've got Kit Harington as Jon Snow, and I liked him to begin with, but I didn't really start to love him until season 3 when he begins that relationship with Ygritte, and it just brings him to life as we see more of his inner conflict, and that relationship brings weight to his story. And I love how after that he becomes a leader against his best wishes in season 5, and he struggles with it, and he makes a choice that costs him his life. And when he comes back in season 6, he's just left with the weight that people hated him so much in what he did that they killed him for it. And we see how that kind of truly affects him, especially when he's fighting off against Ramsay. He's just ready to die. And he told the Red Witch not to bring him back. And then the fact that because he gets Winterfell back, everybody wants him to be King of the North. He really owns it. And I think there's a great path for this character in those first 6 seasons. And he should have easily been the king at the end, because even though he didn't want it, that's what happened to him. There's all these different positions and obligations that he never asked for, but that just came to him naturally. But unfortunately, they just turn him into a little bitch in season 7. Every time he calls Daenerys my queen, and he wants to serve his queen, I couldn't stand him. And the fact that he just throws away the title he owned, King of the North, pisses me off. And then we find out that he's a Targaryen, and it doesn't come into play at all. And I never cared for his relationship with Daenerys, and the fact he goes back to the wall at the end feels like a total regression. Love this character for a while, but they really butchered him in the end. John Bradley as Sam, I like him when he's with John, and his romance with Gilly does have some sweet moments, but when he's on his own, he's just so boring. Alfie Allen, absolutely phenomenal, doesn't get the credit he deserves. Greyjoy is such an underrated character. There's so much complexities with him. There's inner conflict and there's a tragic nature. And what happens to him is just devastating. And the fact that he gets a redemption arc is, yeah, a great character, great performance. Isaac Hempstead as Brown. Like, he's fine enough in the first 2 seasons, but even in seasons 3 and 4, he is the most boring part. Everything regarding the three-eyed raven is just so boring, and the fact he becomes king at the end is just a complete joke. Then we've got Art Parkinson as Recon, who's just very boring. He is the most forgettable Stark, objectively. Then you've got Mark Andy as Robert Baratheon. I think I pronounced it properly here. I definitely didn't in my season 1 review, but there's complexities behind this character. The fact that he loves Lyanna Stark and he never truly moved on after she died, and he married Cersei, who did love him, but he just couldn't love her back, and he took it out on her, and he was definitely heavily flawed. But when you compare him to other people in this world, especially his son who becomes king afterwards, well, his son, he was better than lots. Then you've got Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, who plays Jaime. In the first 4 seasons, they set him up perfectly for a great redemptive arc, but then they just didn't know what to do with him. He regresses time and time again, and then it ends on a note where he pretends he doesn't care about the people of King's Landing when literally his entire backstory is that he does. And then he just goes back to Cersei and dies with her. It just makes the character feel irrelevant. Like, by the end, what did he actually add to it? Nothing. Lena Headey as Cersei, I think she does a good job. I love it when she's playing off of Joffrey and his cruelty. Tyrion, as she has a rivalry with him. As Tywin, as there's a complex father-daughter relationship. But after they all leave King's Landing, she becomes a really boring character. I never liked that scene when she's walking through King's Landing. It doesn't have a fraction of the impact they think it does. And then Tommen dies and she just doesn't react. Seems very out of character for her. And then she becomes Queen, the wicked Queen of the West. But she really does nothing as Queen. And then she's pregnant, but that doesn't really come into play either. So great in the first few seasons, but thrown away. Jack Gleeson is absolutely brilliant as Joffrey. He plays this love-to-hate-him character so perfectly. Rory McKean is really good as the Hound. He didn't need to come back in season 6, but they don't ruin his character. Peter Dinklage in the first half is absolutely phenomenal as Tyrion. Some of the best character work acting I've ever seen. But then in season 5, they just turn him into an idiot, and he only gets worse from that point forward. It's very difficult and one of the more frustrating elements of the show. You've got Shay, played by Cyborg Kikili, who is really great, and I love the relationship between her and Tyrion. It's so well handled, and you understand how she takes certain things and why she acts certain ways, but still a terrible thing to do. And yeah, I think this character was very well utilized. And you've got Jerome Flynn as Bronn, and I love him in the first half of this show and his friendship with Tyrion. But then he just becomes an over-the-top caricature in the second half and really ends up doing nothing. Like, if he died in season 4, everything would go on like normal. Aidan Gillen as Littlefinger, I love him in the first half of this series. He's sneaky, you don't know what he's doing, but then he becomes a bit too over the top in the second half, and it is satisfying to see him die, but by that point you're just kind of waiting for it because there's nothing left for the character to do. Gwendolyn Christie as Brienne of Tarth. I love how honorable this character is and how she's very loyal. Gwendolyn Christie does play her perfectly. Natalie Tina as Orsha is a character who I didn't really talk about once, but I think she actually owns a nice redemptive arc. She kind of looks like Aubrey Plaza, but I do think she's a good character. She's just unfortunately in the worst storyline. Charles Dance as Tywin Lannister. Amazing, perfect performance. He brings so much gravitas. He's menacing, he's compelling, excellent. Cornless Hare as Lord Varys is so intelligent in the first half, but he's so dumb in the second half. Ian Glenn as Joel, he's great in the first half, but then, and I liked his loyalty to Daenerys, but it just becomes pathetic in the second half, and it just really amounts to nothing because he just dies fighting for his queen. It just seems like a very simple note for this character to end off of. If he was the one to kill Daenerys, it would have a lot more weight to it. Emilia Clarke as Daenerys, she's amazing in this show, and she's great in the first half. You know, she's stuck in this terrible situation, but she takes control, and she becomes a very powerful leader. But then they just don't know what to do with her, and everything we got in her character just starts to feel stagnant. And then in the last 2 seasons, her arc is so incredibly rushed that you don't buy a single beat of it. I felt nothing when she died. Harry Lloyd as her brother, Varys Visser. He's great. I love how his jealousy and his insecurities take over. Kind of reminds you of his sister in the last season, but they did it a lot better in one season with another character. I just realized that. Jason Momoa, he's great in the first season. Liam Cunningham as Davos, he's good, but he's never great. He's always like a background character, never the most compelling. Same with Stannis, played by Stephen Dillon, but they actually destroyed his character in the last 2 episodes where he kills that girl, his daughter, and then we don't even see that big fight, and he just goes nuts like that, and it's all very rushed and terribly handled. You've got Milas Landau as played by Karis Van Houten, who's good, but she kind of starts to feel irrelevant after she brings Jon back from the dead. She comes back, and you think that she might do something, but she doesn't. So, what even happened to her? Did she die? I totally forget, actually. Missandei, played by Nathalie Emmanuel, is good in season 3, but she's really boring and adds nothing after. I never buy her friendship with Daenerys. Grey Worm, played by Jacob Anderson, is one of the most boring characters. Ramsay, played by Iwan Rheon, he's another Joffrey, but he still feels different enough. You love to hate him, and it's a great performance. Roose Bolton, played by Michael McArtin, he's actually a very underrated character. When you look at where he begins and how loyal he is to Robb and where his story ends, I already did my list of the best characters, but maybe I would have added him on it. This is a great character. He sells out the Starks, he takes over Winterfell, he gives his bastard son his name, and he ends up getting killed afterwards. He opens up a little bit on the villain side of things, and it cost him his life. Man, yeah, this is a great character. Walder Frey, only showed a few times by David Bradley, but what a great performance. He really makes him stand out. He's so despicable. Natalie Dormer as Marjorie Tyrell, she's great to begin with, but the High Sparrow plot really ruined her. Diana Rigg as Olenna Tyrell, she's great in the first half of the show, but just has nothing to do in the second half. But her death scene is a really great moment when she gets to tell Jaime what she did. There was a lot of other actors and actresses I could name in this show. I could name Pedro Pascal, who is amazing in the 1 season he's in this show. I could name the guy who played the Faceless Warriors. There's a lot of people I could go through, but I'm not going to be here all day. But I got the names I wanted to mention. The stories, I'm not going to go as in depth, but the King's Landing storyline is just the best part of this show for the first 4 seasons. The Ned storyline in season 1, all the inner politics of season 2, and then just everything with the Tyrells coming into the picture in season 3, and then everything with Tyrion in season 4, all perfection, but everything with the High Sparrow doesn't work for me. You retroactively lessen the idea of the Iron Throne as the highest power. And then Cersei's Queen just does nothing for season 7 and 8, so it just really amounts to nothing. And King's Landing boiling down should have been impactful, but I really felt nothing, and that's due to the rushed storytelling, but yes. Everything with Winterfell, I would say, is actually pretty consistently great, whether it's the Starks in it in season 1, and Greyjoy taking it over in season 2, or I guess everything with Robb and his army from seasons 1 to 3 as well, and then in season 4 with Ramsay and the Boltons taking it back. That's some really great stuff, and then it's the best part of seasons 5 and 6. Once they get it taken back though, it just becomes a very stagnant storyline, which is fine, it makes sense, but by the end, I'm just like, oh yeah, Sansa wants to be Lord of Winterfell. I feel like it's kind of been forgotten by this point. Then everything was the Targaryen, Daenerys Targaryen storyline. Great in the first 4 seasons. Season 5, I didn't like the whole gold-faced people. Season 6, I hated the whole Dothraki plot again. And then I already mentioned everything we saw in season 7 and 8 is incredibly rushed. But I do want to mention one thing about this storyline that nobody talks about. The first scene we see the Unsullied, they look like warriors to be reckoned with. They don't feel pain. They are like these fearless warriors. And whenever you see them fight, they just don't feel above the average soldier. Then you see the Dothraki, which are set up to be these huge, badass warriors, and they get wiped out by the White Walkers like that. Just, even though they all get wiped out, they come back in a later episode, which doesn't make sense. And then the dragons, they're set up to be this huge threat, but then they still get hurt with spears and knives and all that. Wouldn't they have tougher skin? Like, I can excuse the first dragon going down with a magic spear, fine, but the second one going down with a non-magic spear, really? They just want the threat they built them up to be. So yeah, then everything with Night Watch is, like I said, boring in the first 2 seasons. Not the best part, but seasons 3 and 4 it gets amazing. In season 5 and 6, it kind of merges with the Winterfell storyline. Then we've got the Bran storyline, which is always the worst part of every season. Yeah, just completely. The White Walkers, I guess that's part of the Night Watch. So well built up to. I love the ending of Hardhome. That is the best moment of season 5. But it really just amounts in this fight where people get saved by the editing and the Night King gets taken out like a little bitch and we don't even see him properly fight once, and after that they just feel like a minor convenience, and that's how butchering the payoff can ruin all the build-up. Arya's storyline in the first 4 seasons is great. Season 5 and 6, her getting trained and all that, didn't really care for. I didn't mind Essie Davis in that storyline in season 6. And it's nice to see her kill Walder Frey, but when she kills the rest of House Frey, it's so over the top. And then she really has nothing to do but kill the Night Watch, but kill the Night King, which really doesn't work for this character. And then she has this list, and I wish that was a bigger focus of it, but it kind of just gets forgotten. I actually wish that was her plot in season 7 and 8, that she won't go back to Winterfell till she finishes off that list. And the Greyjoy storyline, I think, is pretty great, except for Euron Greyjoy. I think him coming in is very convenient, and I think the character is just terrible. I still like everything with Yara Greyjoy and Theon, but it doesn't all come together very well. And like, just when you look at the stories, like, it all should have come together in season 7 and 8 so perfectly, but it starts to feel very fan servicey, and it just feels like a totally different show. Seasons 1 to 4, I need to repeat this, are near perfection. Like, season 2 is really great, but the other 3 seasons are just phenomenal. And they got released within a year of each other, which just blows my mind. Season 5 and 6, Season 5 is terrible, Season 6 is pretty decent, Season 7 is terrible, and then Season 8 is just abysmal. And it's just a shame. Like, whenever I rewatch this show, I'll end it off at Season 4, and I'll love it. And it just makes you think, how much does a bad ending ruin everything that comes beforehand? I love The Office. I think seasons 1 to 7 are just perfection, comedy gold. Season 8 and 9 has its moments, but it's definitely a step down. Does it ruin everything that comes beforehand? Can I say it's a perfect show when there's 2 not great seasons? Now that said, that show can be viewed a lot more episodically, while this one is actually the payoff to the first 4 seasons is disappointing. So how much does that affect them? Another show like Arrested Development, first 3 seasons, perfect. They made more, not good. Community, first 3 seasons, great. Season 4 is abysmal. Season 5 and 6 are fine. Not as good as some people say. But all three of those shows are still three of my favorites. And yes, this is still more story heavy. But like I said, I'm just going to rewatch the first four seasons. I might rewatch season 6 one or two more times in my lifetime. But seasons 1 to 4, I see myself revisiting a lot. And I don't think they'll automatically ruin because they butchered the ending. Like I said, they messed up the King's Landing plot. They messed up the White Walkers and all that. But the character work and the story and the writing are just so strong in the first 4 seasons that I don't hate this show. I don't not like it. I still think it's great. You know, I'm just picking and choosing what I choose to remember this show for. And I don't think it's fair to the brilliance of the first 4 seasons to just dismiss it like that. So yeah, I still really like this show. Just a few more things I want to mention is that traveling. In the early seasons of this show, it would take great periods of time just to get to a single location, but in the last few seasons, it's like they just teleport. Tyrion spends almost all of season 1 just going from the Night Watch to King's Landing eventually. And then people just teleporting. Season 8 begins and Jon and Daenerys just get to Winterfell, and that should have been a longer travel than they make it out to be. Like, how long did it take from Stannis to get to Winterfell, and Jon just takes, and Daenerys just take no time at all. And like I said, I think the last 2 seasons have lots of fan servicey moments where they just feel more immature. It feels like the Marvel, but in Game of Thrones, where all these different characters are just talking together and they'll be like, oh, how's this person? And it doesn't sit right with me. The humor gets really atrocious, way too many dick jokes, especially with Bronn. And then you've also got the whole side that you've got some strong female characters, but then in the later seasons they start to draw attention to it and it starts to feel a little pandering. Few more things I want to mention. It's a well-directed show for the most part. It's got some great visuals. I love the costumes and the makeup, especially with the White Walkers. The visual effects and the sound are great. The cinematography is nice. It feels big budget for the most part, even though there's some choppy green screen every now and again. And the musical score by Warren Giordrati is just phenomenal. It really is. And yeah, I still love this show despite its issues. First 4 seasons, near perfection. My only issue really is the Bran storyline is boring, even in the great seasons, but everything else is so strong that I can forgive it for that. In the later seasons, there's a lot less great stuff than there is bad stuff, unfortunately, and it does bum me out. It does disappoint me that this show ends on a whimper, but yeah, I think I've said my piece, really. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and give Game of Thrones, the entire series, a 7.5 out of 10. I'm curious if people think that's too high, but, like, come on. You're one of the greatest shows ever in the first 4 seasons, not just a good show, not just an okay show, just one of the greatest, that doesn't mean nothing. It just doesn't. So what are your thoughts on Game of Thrones? Does the last few seasons ruin your love for the first few seasons? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon. And Gavin